Hi, it's a beautiful day in the Monterey area. Got a nice Monterey cypress there in the background. Just kind of got a set up in the backyard to show you some wood burning or pyrography techniques. And this is a blank slate. It's a piece of poplar. It's 10 inches by 14 inches. And I'm going to put a ship on it and talk about a couple different wood burning tools as well as some techniques to use. So let's get started, and we'll start with the image. I have my little helper dog here, and she's eagerly awaiting a ball thrown. But Gracie, we're doing wood burning now. Gracie, not ball right now. Okay, here we go. So here's the ship that we want to transfer onto the wood. I just took it off of stock imagery, just Google imaged it, which I do a lot of my images, and I've done sea otters and all kinds of stuff. If you go to firefingerart.com, you can see about some of the other things that I've done on oak and maple, and this is poplar. So we're going to transfer that image onto there. But before, and also another thing I'd like to mention before I move on is I think environment is really important. I happen to be blessed with this wonderful environment and weather around us here in Monterey. But it's just, this is a backyard thing on a nice day. It's not always this nice out. But if you're in a room, in a garage or something, it's kind of dark and stuff. You'll need lighting. But try and surround yourself with color and music, because I really think it enhances and really brings out, just the feeling, creativity and stuff. And even though we're, say, transferring an image that's already, a photograph, there's still creativity, like how you do the water, how you do show the shading in the sails and stuff. So there's still a lot of creativity involved. On to other tools, okay, for transferring. This is an image that is, and of course you can freehand everything. There's no law against that, and I would encourage it as much as possible. But for speed and maybe accuracy, or if you're just nervous about freehanding, I would just get a straight edge. These are just cheap plastic straight edges you can get at drafting supplies or craft stores, and these would be used for your straight lines, like for example the masts and the walks getting up to the upper masts, some of the straight lines. But as you can see, the straight line doesn't work so well on the sails. Now there's ways of doing that. You can kind of draw a little line, then move it, draw a little line, move it, draw a little line, and then when you get to wood burning it, you just kind of make a nice smooth sweep. But again, if you don't feel confident with that, there's other tools, drafting tools and stuff you can find to do curved lines and to do round lines. These are really cheap plastic, templates, if you will. But there's also curves, and if you go online for about 11 bucks, I saw you can get also metal French curves, and so you could actually wood burn against the metal with your tip, and that's pretty cool. I may do some of that just to demonstrate. But for now, let's move on to transferring an image. So let's begin. I'm going to start demonstrating transferring the image. And what I always like to do, and I tell my kids and I tell people that I'm talking to about art, always leave yourself a border. And in my particular case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to router these edges. Now you can router them yourself if you have a router, or you can pay someone to do it, or if you have a friend that has a router. So I need to leave a border. But in any art, I always like to leave a border. Now here's one that I started, and this is on maple, and as you can see I've already pre-routed and sanded, and that's a good idea too, is to pre-sand and pre-router your edges. That way you're not routering over your image. But for now I'm just going to do the layout draw the image on, and then I'll probably router afterwards. I've done some sanding. I may do a little bit more. Before I lay the image out though, what I kind of look at is I look at the grain of the wood. And partly when I go to the hardware store or a lumber place to find wood, I look at grains. I look a lot with grains. You don't want any knots unless you're going to use that as part of your image, because knots are really difficult to work with. And again, that's, you know, that's personal preference. And if you want a whole canvas then to work with, then, you know, try and find something without knots. Or if you do get one with knots, make sure they're really minor. Now, if you look at this piece of wood, you'll notice the dark area at the top. And so I could have incorporated that into my image, but I chose the opposite side of the wood. And then there's, as you can see, I just started drawing, freehanding in a sea otter that I'm going to do later. It's just a small, you know, a small canvas. This is a larger canvas. It's a larger image, much more majestic. And so now if you look at now look at how the see where the ship is, and see where the clouds are and how they're kind of farther apart, and how the water, the lines of the water are closer together. So I kind of picked this piece because it repeats that sort of feeling. So if I turn it over, then I see I kind of lose it. Kind of lose it there. However, in something like this, maybe you'd want to put, like, you know, some fish floating, a sea otter floating in there and whatnot, and then this is maybe a series of clouds at the top. It really just depends on your image and what you're going to go for. Again, this is, you know, closer lines together I look at in general, farther apart, so that's why I picked this piece. Now the ship is going to sit in here. Now you've got kind of the bottom of the ship here where it touches the water line. That's going to go somewhere in here, and then the rest of it's going to go up. And there's no rule that says I have to do the whole ship. I could actually, you know, cut some of this off and just focus on this portion of the ship. You know, really, that's your artistic bent. On this one, I'm probably going to do some colorization. I'm going to add some color, so it's not just going to be a wood burning. So we'll demonstrate that as well. There's going to be some blue with watercolor. Okay, we'll move on. Now, okay, I've got some lines laid out. I'm not sure how well you can see. I'm outside and I'm looking through a lens, so it's hard to tell if you can see this. But I've began some line work. First thing I did was I kind of laid out lines, light lines on the outside of the border. Kind of redundant, huh? Outside of the border. Anyway, on the border area, so that I wouldn't go beyond that. I won't draw beyond that. Or you can draw beyond that just to carry it through and then just don't burn it in later. These lines here, I went ahead and drew the masts with a straight edge. I also drew, just to prove that it could be done, I drew the curved line of the ship's head, the gunnel there, with a straight edge, and I just did, it's a kind of slowly curving edge, so I just did it in pieces like that. And then the sails, as you can see, zoom up a little bit, up there, I did some freehand and some straight edge. Now just a word about just basic drawing, and maybe some of you already know this, I didn't discover it right away. When you're drawing curved lines, always try and draw the curve away from your fingers, because that's the natural flow of your wrist. Let me demonstrate. So here's a curved line like this. Now see how my wrist turns and there's a natural curve. So if the curve is going out, we just want to naturally do a curve like that. Whereas if the curve is going in, see, it's harder to do. So what I do is I just turn it over and then I just do the curve this way. And see how easier that is? And you can actually do shorter curves too. But these sweeping curves are easier to do. Always try and do the curves away from your fingers. See that? And then these straight lines, of course, you can do these are straight lines that I did with straight edge. I don't know if I filmed that in properly. Let's back that up just a little hair. Okay. So these upper lines I did with the straight edge, upper lines, and then this one here I did as a curve. And again, I did my wrist, I turned it, the board, so that I could do the curve line with my wrist. And that's just a, now you can, again, you can use templates for that, but I find it quicker and I can always adjust it later. And the nice thing about pencil is you can erase it. You know, we can erase it. Okay. And a word about erasing, once you've wood burned it, you're going to see some pencil lines. So all you have to do is go back in and take a bit large eraser and erase over any pencil lines that you are objectionable and you don't want to see in the final product. So be that as it may, that's the beginnings of our layout. So here we have most of the layout done for the ship. I probably drew some of the lines darker, and it may even be too light for what, you know, I mean, sorry, too light for the video, but I actually drew them darker than I would normally draw them. And the reason being is because if you push too hard, you're actually, you know, causing grooves to be put into the wood, and you don't want that. You just want light lines so that you can, they're just guidelines, that's all they are. And by guidelines, what I mean is, for example, these masts are rounded. They're not just going to be a straight line. So when I come back and I wood burn them, I'm going to do a shading just like we would on a rounded surface. I'm going to do a shading. These probably I'll use the knife edge because they're just going to be lines. These masts I'm going to use shader. The area of the, you see the shading in the sail itself, in the sails, these lines are like shade lines. Okay, so there's going to be a dark and a light. That's going to be a shader. The railing here I'll probably do with the line, and keep in mind that when you're wood burning it comes out black and these are white lines. Well, that's okay. You know, we're changing colors a little bit. Obviously I'm not getting the browns. The blues, I'm going to do that, but I may do a little bit of shading in the clouds, but generally speaking I'm going to let the grain of the wood be the clouds. I might do just some light shading back here just to kind of enhance some cloudy areas. Same thing with the water. I might, you know, do a little bit of shading, but I'm not going to do a lot. I'm going to let the coloring do that for me. So just a word about, you know, that's the artistic part of it. So you can see the wind is blowing. That's adding to the effect of sailing. Anyway, so there again, that whole mood setting thing. So that's a bit about tools and layout, and then the next video will actually show the wood burning.